Graham, since your talk show is known for its celebrity pairing, who has been the worst guest combo of all time that just did not click?
Tell me.
I mean, well, the worst guest we've ever had, because people used to ask me who the worst guest was.
Yes, always.
And I never had an answer, because you don't want to offend anyone.
Yes, of course.
But I won't challenge you to a big dick contest.
I knew you.
Because I forgot mine at home. But I will challenge you to a voice contest.
At 62, Graham Norton has finally named the celebrity guest he couldn't stand.
He's not that good looking. I would just take you back to the pound.
Just drop me off.
But
He's trying a different tack.
From Mickey Rourke, who harassed Jessica Biel, to Mark Wahlberg, who fell asleep drunk on his couch.
All right, let me do this again. I'm going to redeem myself. Like my character in Broken City, this is a redemption story.
Okay, who's
Next person.
Oh, no, it's her
Give
again.
me somebody.
It's her again.
Her again?
It's the...
These are the celebrity guests who have made Graham Norton's job a living nightmare. So let's get into it. For years, Graham Norton had deflected the question with professional grace. Interviewers would ask who his worst guest had been, and he would smile diplomatically, insisting that everyone had been lovely. It was the response of a seasoned television host who understood that burning bridges in Hollywood was bad for business. But time changes everything. When Harvey Weinstein's crimes became public knowledge, Norton finally had the perfect opportunity to settle an old score. The disgraced movie mogul's fall from grace gave the Irish host the cover he needed to speak honestly about an experience that had clearly left a lasting impression.
No.
Really? And was he a bad guest?
Well, apparently, yes. An awful guest.
Yes. Well, I mean, an awful person, but
Yeah.
was he a bad guest?
Yeah, I mean, he was an odd man.
Weinstein's appearance on The Graham Norton Show had taken place years before his crimes became public. But Norton's retrospective assessment suggested there had been warning signs about the producer's character that were apparent even during what should have been a lighthearted promotional interview.
And Mike Nichols, may he rest in peace, Carly Simon, Nora Ephron, a lot of her friends were at the table, and I just sat down and she said, for the man who has everything. Now, the Four Seasons Grill is not the Four Seasons Hotel. This is where Henry Kissinger, Barry Diller, all the titans of industry are all in this room. Judi Dench unbuckles her pants, and on her bum, as you say,
Yes?
JD loves HW.
What made Norton's revelation particularly significant was the context in which it was delivered. The host had spent decades protecting celebrity reputations, always finding diplomatic ways to deflect criticism rather than blame guest behavior. His decision to name Weinstein specifically marked a clear departure from his usual policy of professional discretion. The timing of Norton's admission reflected the broader cultural shift that followed Weinstein's exposure. Entertainment industry professionals suddenly felt empowered to speak honestly about experiences they had previously kept private out of professional necessity or fear of retaliation. Norton's revelation was part of a larger pattern of people finally feeling safe to tell the truth about their interactions with a man who had wielded enormous power in Hollywood for decades. For viewers who had always wondered which guests had been disasters behind the scenes, Norton's identification of Weinstein provided a satisfying answer to a long-standing question. It also validated the instincts of those who had sensed something unsettling about the producer's public persona long before his crimes became known. The revelation marked a turning point in Norton's approach to discussing difficult guests, opening the door for him to be more candid about other challenging experiences from his decades in television. With Weinstein named as his worst guest, Norton had established a new baseline for honest discussion about the celebrities who had made his professional life difficult. If Harvey Weinstein represented calculated unpleasantness, Mark Wahlberg embodied pure chaos. The Boston actor's February 2013 appearance on The Graham Norton Show has become the stuff of television legend, but for all the wrong reasons. What was meant to be a standard promotional interview for his film Broken City turned into a masterclass in how alcohol and celebrity ego can completely derail a professional production. The evening began normally enough. Wahlberg joined fellow guests Sarah Silverman and Michael Fassbender on Norton's famous red couch, with the show's producers providing their customary drinks for guests who wanted them. But Wahlberg had clearly taken advantage of more than just the on-set refreshments, arriving at the studio in a state that would become increasingly obvious as the cameras rolled.
That's social. That's a social thing.
I don't drink.
No, it's a recipe for disaster.
No. But I
said,
did take
please,
acid
nobody
about
let me
40
have
minutes
nuggets
ago.
and That's vodka, by the way. Mixed with whiskey.
Norton later explained that Wahlberg had appeared fine during pre-show preparations, showing no obvious signs of intoxication. But alcohol has a delayed effect, and what Norton described as a time-lapse situation meant that Wahlberg became progressively more inebriated as the taping continued. What started as subtle signs of looseness gradually escalated into full-blown disruption of the entire production. The first warning sign came when Wahlberg began interrupting his fellow guests. Norton's show thrived on natural conversation flow between celebrities, with each guest contributing stories and building on each other's anecdotes. But Wahlberg seemed incapable of allowing anyone else to hold the spotlight, constantly butting in with comments, corrections, or complete topic changes that derailed whatever narrative was being constructed. Sarah Silverman and Michael Fassbender found themselves struggling to complete even basic stories as Wahlberg's interruptions became more frequent and aggressive. Norton, who prided himself on managing difficult personalities and keeping conversations flowing smoothly, was fighting a losing battle against a guest determined to dominate every moment of airtime. The situation reached its nadir during the Big Red Chair segment, where audience members tell stories hoping not to be flipped through a trapdoor. Wahlberg's judgment was so impaired that he was flipping guests before they had even begun their stories, displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of how the segment worked. His treatment of one female audience member was particularly cringeworthy, as he made disparaging comments about her appearance before unceremoniously ejecting her from the chair.
I don't like her disposition. Oh, stop it! She's a nurse.
The physical escalation came when Wahlberg suddenly decided his designated spot on the couch was insufficient. In a move that shocked both Norton and the studio audience, he stood up and positioned himself directly on the host's lap, wrapping his arms around Norton in an unwelcome embrace that clearly made the veteran presenter deeply uncomfortable. Norton's attempts to maintain composure while dealing with an intoxicated celebrity literally on top of him demonstrated the kind of professional challenge that television hosts hope never to face. Wahlberg's hands began wandering across Norton's chest and face, creating a deeply inappropriate situation that the host had to navigate while maintaining the show's entertainment value. The final act of Wahlberg's chaotic performance came when exhaustion and alcohol finally combined to render him unconscious. As Michael Fassbender began telling a story that was actually holding the audience's attention, Norton noticed that Wahlberg had simply fallen asleep on the couch, finally providing his fellow guests with the piece they needed to complete their anecdotes. Norton's later reflection on the incident revealed both his frustration with Wahlberg's behavior and his relief that the actor's unconsciousness had at least allowed the show to end on a more professional note. The episode became a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing alcohol with live television, demonstrating how quickly a promotional appearance could spiral into complete disaster. Mickey Rourke's appearance on The Graham Norton Show brought a different kind of chaos entirely. The former boxer-turned-actor had arrived during his brief career resurgence, following critical acclaim for the wrestler. But what viewers witnessed that evening was a masterclass in how celebrity behavior could make everyone in the studio deeply uncomfortable. From the moment Rourke settled onto the couch next to Jessica Biel, it became apparent that he viewed the interview as an opportunity to publicly pursue the actress rather than promote his work. What should have been lighthearted conversation about their respective projects quickly devolved into a series of increasingly inappropriate comments that left Biel visibly uncomfortable and Norton scrambling to maintain control. Rourke's commentary about Biel began with supposedly complimentary observations about her appearance, but quickly escalated into suggestions that were completely inappropriate for a television interview.
You're really not that good looking. I would just take you back to the pound.
Just drop me off.
But
He's trying a different tack.
The actress found herself trapped by the conventions of television promotion and professional courtesy. Walking off the show would have created a scandal and potentially damaged her own career. But staying meant enduring Rourke's increasingly bold comments while cameras rolled. Her discomfort was visible to anyone watching as she attempted to maintain a professional smile while clearly wanting to be anywhere else. Norton found himself in the unprecedented position of having to protect one guest from another.
Is one of your dogs, you rescued it when it got a nail in its head.
No, that was Bella Loca.
Good connection.
And how weird is this?
Yes.
Go.
His attempts to redirect the conversation away from Rourke's inappropriate commentary were met with resistance from an actor who seemed to view the entire situation as a game he was determined to win. The host's usual tools for managing difficult guests proved inadequate when faced with someone who simply refused to acknowledge normal social boundaries. The situation became so tense that Norton was forced to acknowledge it directly on camera, making comments about monitoring the situation and ensuring Biel's comfort. For a host who prided himself on smooth professionalism, having to publicly intervene to protect a guest from harassment was both personally embarrassing and professionally damaging. Kevin Costner's first appearance on The Graham Norton Show should have been a triumph for both host and guest. The Academy Award-winning actor and director was bringing decades of Hollywood credibility and a catalog of beloved films to Norton's couch. Instead, the interview became a study in how cultural differences and mismatched expectations could create television that was more awkward than entertaining. Costner arrived with all the gravitas befitting a Hollywood legend. His films had grossed hundreds of millions worldwide and earned critical acclaim across multiple decades. He was promoting Criminal, a thriller where he played against type as a dangerous character who receives memory implants. It should have provided plenty of material for engaging conversation.
I feel like, we always are entering everybody's living room, basically. So I've watched, admired, and laughed, and you're always kind of think better. Jesus Christ.
The problem became obvious almost immediately. Costner seemed unprepared for the informal, alcohol-fueled atmosphere that made Norton's show popular with British audiences. The format, which encouraged spontaneous storytelling and playful interaction between guests, appeared to genuinely confuse an actor accustomed to the more structured tone of American talk shows. Norton's approach relied heavily on creating a party-like atmosphere where stars could let their guard down and reveal more personality than they might in traditional promotional settings. The red couch, the drinks, the ensemble format, all were designed to break down barriers that usually separated celebrities from audiences and each other. But Costner viewed these elements as obstacles rather than opportunities. His responses to Norton's questions were formal and measured, lacking the spontaneous humor that made for great television. When other guests shared funny or embarrassing stories, Costner's contributions felt stilted and rehearsed, as if he was delivering prepared sound bites rather than engaging in genuine conversation.
I thought I knew who he was, but he said he wanted to come see me, and so he comes in my driveway, big van, and they bring him out, and there's like 9 people, and he comes into my living room, and I didn't really know how to...
The cultural disconnect became most apparent during moments when Norton attempted to inject his trademark irreverent humor into the conversation. British comedy often relies on willingness to puncture pomposity and find humor in unexpected places, but Costner seemed resistant to this approach. His serious demeanor created a tone completely at odds with the show's usual energy. Other guests that evening demonstrated the kind of playful interaction that Norton's format was designed to showcase. They interrupted each other's stories, made self-deprecating jokes, and built on each other's anecdotes in ways that created genuine entertainment. Costner remained largely separate from these exchanges, responding when directly addressed, but failing to contribute to the collective energy that made the show work. Norton's attempts to draw Costner into the group dynamic were met with polite but distant responses that suggested the actor was enduring the experience rather than enjoying it. His body language remained formal throughout, never fully relaxing into the casual atmosphere that the production team worked hard to create. The disconnect wasn't necessarily Costner's fault. American and British approaches to celebrity interviews differ significantly, and what works on American television might feel foreign and uncomfortable on a British chat show. But the mismatch created television that felt forced and artificial, undermining the natural chemistry that Norton relied on. The incident highlighted challenges that international television formats face when accommodating guests from different cultural backgrounds. What Norton saw as harmless fun, Costner may have perceived as disrespectful or unprofessional, leading to a disconnect that neither host nor guest was able to bridge during the taping. Robert De Niro presented Graham Norton with a challenge that had nothing to do with bad behavior, drunkenness, or inappropriate conduct. The legendary actor's problem was far simpler and far more difficult to solve. He simply had nothing to say. For a chat show that depended entirely on guests being willing to engage in entertaining conversation, De Niro represented the ultimate test of Norton's interviewing skills.
Oscars. You have been nominated, is it 8? I think 8 times.
Yeah, 8, I think, or 9 maybe.
Yeah, let's go with 9. And but 2 wins, that's the important thing. Yeah, 2 wins.
Wow.
Norton found himself working harder during De Niro interviews than at any other time. Every question had to be carefully crafted to elicit more than a monosyllabic response. And even then, success was far from guaranteed. The usual rhythm of conversation that flowed naturally with most guests became a laborious process of extraction when De Niro was on the couch. The actor's minimalist approach wasn't necessarily a sign of disrespect or discomfort. Those who knew him professionally often noted that De Niro was quite friendly and engaging in private settings. But something about the formal television interview environment seemed to activate his most guarded instincts, turning him into a near-silent presence that provided little material for entertainment. Norton's later comments about De Niro revealed both professional frustration and personal fondness for the actor. The host acknowledged that De Niro was never unpleasant or difficult in the traditional sense, but his inability to engage in the kind of storytelling that made for good television created unique challenges that Norton struggled to overcome. The situation was complicated by De Niro's enormous stature in the film industry. Unlike lesser-known guests who might be gently encouraged to be more forthcoming, criticizing or pushing too hard against someone of De Niro's caliber could have serious professional repercussions. Norton was forced to walk a careful line between trying to create entertaining television and respecting the boundaries of one of cinema's most revered figures. The contrast between De Niro's public persona and his interview style highlighted the artificial nature of television promotion. While his characters were often intense, emotional, and highly verbal, the man himself seemed to have little interest in revealing the personality behind the performances. This disconnect created a frustrating viewing experience for audiences hoping to learn something about the person behind iconic roles. Norton's attempts to find topics that might spark De Niro's interest met with limited success. Whether discussing current projects, past achievements, or personal interests, the actor maintained the same guarded demeanor that made meaningful conversation nearly impossible. His responses rarely provided the kind of specific details or humorous observations that Norton could use to build entertaining segments. The De Niro experiences taught Norton valuable lessons about the limits of his abilities as an interviewer and the importance of matching guests to appropriate formats. Daryl Hannah's 2002 appearance on The Graham Norton Show represented perhaps the most puzzling guest experience in the program's history. Unlike the obvious problems of drunken behavior or inappropriate conduct, Hannah's difficulties stem from a psychological barrier that rendered her almost completely unable to participate in basic television conversation. The actress, known for roles in Splash, Blade Runner, and Kill Bill, had apparently agreed to appear despite harboring a deep and paralyzing fear of studio audiences. This phobia created an unprecedented situation: a guest who physically could not engage in normal television interviewing, not out of hostility or unprofessionalism, but due to genuine psychological distress. Norton had been warned about Hannah's difficulties with talk show appearances. Industry stories circulated about her having fainted during a previous attempt to appear on The Late Show with David Letterman, suggesting that her fear of studio audiences was both genuine and severe. Despite these warnings, the decision was made to proceed with the booking, perhaps hoping that Norton's more relaxed approach might help her feel comfortable. The reality proved far more challenging than anticipated. Hannah's terror in the face of the live studio audience was so intense that it essentially paralyzed her ability to engage in normal conversation. Her responses to Norton's questions were minimal, often consisting of single words or brief phrases that provided no material for the host to work with. Norton later described the experience as excruciating, noting that Hannah seemed to be suffering genuine distress throughout the taping. The host found himself trying to conduct an interview with someone who appeared to be having a panic attack, creating a situation that was uncomfortable for everyone involved and virtually impossible to edit into entertaining television. What made the situation particularly frustrating was that Hannah's fears seemed specific to the studio audience environment rather than television appearances in general. Norton noted that she was perfectly capable of performing in stage plays, where she could embody a character rather than appearing as herself. This distinction suggested that her difficulties were rooted in the vulnerability required for talk show appearances. The contrast between Hannah's public image and her television performance was stark. In her films, she had played confident, often ethereal characters who seemed completely at ease in any situation. But faced with the reality of a live studio audience and the expectation that she engage in spontaneous conversation, she became almost completely non-functional as a television guest. Norton's handling of the situation demonstrated both his professionalism and his limitations as an interviewer. While he tried to be patient and understanding, the demands of television production meant that the show had to continue regardless of one guest's personal struggles. The result was an episode that satisfied no one. The lasting impact of Hannah's appearance extended beyond just one awkward evening. It highlighted the assumptions that television production makes about celebrity guests and their ability to perform the basic functions required for talk show appearances. Most booking decisions are based on a star's public recognition and current projects, with little consideration given to their psychological suitability for live television. Norton's later reflections on the Hannah experience revealed a mixture of sympathy for her personal struggles and frustration with the professional challenges she created. The incident served as a reminder of the human cost of celebrity culture, where public figures are expected to perform versions of themselves for audience entertainment, regardless of their personal comfort levels. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye.